7 US tour was pretty much a sellout. Midway through, we actually played 2 nights at the legendary Madison Square Gardens in New York, which is a sort of landmark for any artist.
It was a watershed for me. It was a mythical place, of course, and a big deal for us to play. And my parents, from the beginning, well, my dad, really. My dad had really been against the whole business of me being a rock star. He's curious because he helped me build the guitar. If it hadn't been for my dad slaving hours and hours making this homemade guitar, I probably would never have got to this place. He really felt that I'd thrown my education away. I mean, I was educated to a high level. So to suddenly go off and join a rock band with apparently no future, my dad really could not compute it. And he was kind of in tears, really. You know, he just felt I'd thrown my life away completely. But anyway, we were playing Madison Square Garden, and I said, look, Dad, this is a big one for us, playing America. It's New York. It's the first time we played this amazing place. Come over. So I said, Dad, you're going on the Concorde. You know, it was my dad and my mum. And they came to the gig, and I remember to this day this feeling that our feet weren't really on the ground. There was so much electricity in this place. And we came off thinking, wow, that was really something. And then I went back with my dad, and my dad said, OK. He said, OK, I get it now. Thank you, Madison Square Garden.
What's happening when we go back to London? You're one of very few bands now that actually haven't left Britain.
We're sort of an English band in a way. We've always lived there. Well, London particularly. We've always recorded in England.
It doesn't change the fact that the taxman still takes a lot of your money.
Because I think at the time we were paying 83%. And plus, if you had any money in the bank which was earning interest, another 15, which means 98% tax. So we decided to record the next album, which was jazz, in France.
So that's what we did. In a tiny little village called Super-Bear, we started the process of making this album.
Bicycle, bicycle, bicycle. I want to ride my bicycle, bicycle, bicycle.
Lots of sort of local colour got put onto that album.
I want to ride my bike.
We were sitting there, and the Tour de France, you know, the cycle race came through and inspired Freddie to write Bicycle. And for some strange reason, inspired me to write Fat Bottom Girls, although there might have been other inspirations there.
On your marks, get set, go!
Sadly, we weren't there for the filming. But I thought it was a hugely amusing idea.
Bicycle, bicycle, bicycle.
I remember the huge disappointment that none of us could be at the photo shoot because we were exiled from England, so we couldn't go back in to see it.
I don't think you'd be able to do that now, would you?
Yeah, I don't think we would go there these days. When it came time to launch the jazz album, we had the idea of having a massive party in New Orleans.
Oh, you gonna take me home tonight? Oh.
It was the so-called launch of that album. And we had lots of girls and things, and there was a band, a New Orleans band. It was a very, very over-the-top party.
Fat bottom girls, you make the rockin' world go round.
We had a bit of a spiritual connection with New Orleans, and a lot of our friends came, of all sexes.
It was definitely fun. When I opened up the door of my suite, on the bed was a complete case of Dom Perignon, and then and it was downhill from there.
I remember I felt quite ill the next day.
The story about the dwarves with the cocaine being strapped to bowls to their head for people to help themselves to at a party is, I think, complete, well, it's complete bollocks.
I don't know. I don't remember.
There was a man who, he was actually a person of restricted growth, who did lay under meats. He said, when asked what he did, he said, I lay under meats. And he's covered in sort of cold cuts and sort of chopped liver and stuff like that. And you couldn't see him. And so people would approach the trestle table, and as they just reached out to scoop their meat, he would just move like that. And that was his act.
Tonight, I'm gonna have myself a real good time. I feel alive.
It wasn't a pretense. We actually did live the life of a rock band, sort of living on the edge in a sense.
Turning inside out, yeah. I'm floating around in ecstasy, so don't stop me now.
Don't Stop Me Now is a whole different trip, really. It's become one of the most popular Queen songs of all time.
A shooting star leaping through the sky like a tiger, defying the laws of gravity. I'm a racing car passing by like Lady Godiva. I'm gonna go, there's no stopping me. I'm burning through the sky.
It's a song of sort of unfettered joy.
I'm traveling at the speed of light. I wanna make a supersonic woman of you.
I mean, I've been quoted as saying that I don't like the track. I kind of do like the track, but I had mixed feelings because in a sense, it represented a sort of separatism. It was very much Freddie's world and reflecting what he was going through.
Freddie took to the gay scene in New York like David Attenborough making a wildlife program. He'd report on what he'd seen with that kind of hey attitude that he had. There was this one particular place called the Anvil, which seemed to have invented new uses for parts of the human anatomy. He was never shocked. He was eager to be involved in everything. It was like he was a social field worker.
As far as I'm concerned, I mean, I just want to pack in as much of life and fun and having a good time as much as I can.
If you wanna have a good time, just give me a call. Don't stop me now. I'm having a good time. Don't stop me now. I'm having a good time. I don't wanna stop at
The album Jazz was not a complete flop. It did get to #6 in the chart. But Don't Stop Me Now, which is a big favorite in Britain to this day, but in America only got to the 80s. The review in Rolling Stone was notorious, and it shows you that Queen were not respected.
We were confused by that title. Why would a rock band call their album Jazz?
It had a couple of great tracks on it, but it had some sort of weaker stuff on it.
Queen was maybe viewed as the Indian meal that had gone cold in the refrigerator.
It was going to happen in '79 for Queen.
We're going to make more records, tour even more. Don't know, it's difficult to say. This has been our hardest working year.
We'd heard that there was this great studio called Musicland in Munich, and we heard that there's this great engineer called Mac, and we got into this rather kind of indulgent way of just bowling into the studio with no ideas, or very few ideas, and just doing it from scratch. You know, what you got? Well, I don't know, I've got this.
Fred did write the song in the bath in about 10 minutes.
And he said, get me a guitar. And he sat on the sofa and started the chords to Crazy Little Thing. And the next thing he said, right, tell them I'm coming over and we've got to go straight into the studio.
I was very quick, had everything set up in pretty much no time. And I put it down, and then the best bit was, quickly, let's finish it before Brian gets here, otherwise it takes a little longer.
That was the first #1 across the board in America. Billboard, Cashbox and Record World, I think.
We were still making the record. We hadn't even nearly finished the album. And we were going out in Munich. And somebody came up and said, oh, it's gone to #1 in America. And we were going, yeah, more drinks.
It's a crazy little thing, completely cracked the charts in America. But it wasn't easy to find the follow-up. Play the Game charted outside the US top 40. But the next single was something very different.
One of the things I always liked about Queen was that they were 4 individuals, all of whom brought something to the table, musically and in terms of songwriting, and that includes the bass player, John Deacon.
I'd always wanted to do something a little bit more that was more sort of disco-y, which was very uncool at the time.
I mean, funk wasn't really in the vocabulary.
John was pulling us strongly in that direction, a sort of funky direction. And John got Roger to play with tape all over his drums, which is exactly what Roger hated. Roger hated his drums being made to sound dead.
I didn't really want to get into dance music. It wasn't my thing.
Another one bites the dust.
Freddie got deeply into it. Freddie sort of sang it until he bled, because he was so committed to making it sound the way John wanted it, which was like hardcore, I don't know what you would call it, but it's kind of more towards black music than white music.
Michael came to several shows, I think, at the Forum in LA, and he loved Freddie. And he kept saying, you guys, you've got to put that song out. And I wasn't particularly enamoured with it, so I said, no, you're kidding, it's never a single.
Another one bites the dust.
Another One Bites the Dust was never seen as a single. I mean, it barely made it onto the album.
It got on the radio, and it got heard by people that didn't even know who the band was.
Strangely enough, the record became huge because of the black audience. There's one particular station in New York picked it up, thinking that we were a black band, and played the hell out of it, and it became a huge hit.
I was like #1 in 9 different charts. I mean, even in the country chart, you know, it's ridiculous.
And this thing just kept selling to around 3 million. It was in the Hot 100 for 31 weeks.
When an opponent would get knocked out in a boxing match, you'd hear Another One Bites the Dust used. It became an anthem of triumph.
I think it's still the biggest record we ever had.
I remember people pointing at the cars and saying, you guys are bad. And what does that mean? It means that mean you're good. If you're successful in America, basically you've made it.
We kind of became the biggest group in the world at that moment. You know, it's a fleeting moment, because someone else will come and take over, but for that moment, we kind of owned the world.
The sales figures tell the story that the people wanted Queen even when the press didn't.
Looking back on it now, I'd say Queen were never in fashion. We were never a fashionable group, I don't think.
Maybe that was to our benefit, that we didn't become the thing of the moment. We didn't become a fashionable thing.
We were just popular, which got right up some people's noses.